I think I'm skinny fat.
I started one of the first functional medicine telehealth centers in the world over a decade ago. So I have a lot of clinical experience, thousands of patients around the world.
What we eat and how we eat affects our mood, affects our mind, affects the craziness or what I call the spinniness inside of us, doesn't it?
Paracelsus called fasting the physician within, which I think is quite an eloquent way to put it. It's this inner doctor that repairs and resets and renews that we can tap into if we only give our body the chance to do so. Consider this as sort of this proverbial yoga class for your metabolism. New things take time to get the art and the rhythm of it and gain resilience and gain flexibility. You will just have this resolute, deep discernment on what your body loves and what your body hates.
Woohoo! Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to lose weight and feel better, then do we have the Intuitive Fasting Show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Will Cole, a leading functional medicine expert, the best-selling author of Ketotarian and the Inflammation Spectrum, and the author of a fascinating new must-read for your health, Intuitive Fasting. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today. About how to lose weight, recharge your metabolism, and reset your health through the power of intuitive fasting. That, plus we'll talk about breadheads and late night fasting, logs and kindling, autophagy and mitophagy, what in the world is the Keto Flu, and what on earth rats and worms have to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Will. Are you ready to shine?
I love that introduction. I need you to be my hype man every day of my life, if that's fine. Thank you.
You're so welcome and a mighty woohoo. All right.
Yes.
I can't believe I'm going to go here, and I can't believe I'm actually going to say this before hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. I think I'm skinny fat. I'm a former pro endurance athlete, ketogenic diet for years, kicked my hypoglycemia and my pre-diabetic condition to the curb. Now I still eat somewhat higher fat, but something's off. No matter how much I lose weight and my face has gotten really gaunt at times, I have a pooch and I cannot get rid of it. So I want to dive in there. But before we do that, why is Gwyneth Paltrow so bullish about intuitive fasting?
Well, I mean, she was kind enough, I've known her for years, and she's kind enough to write the foreword of the book. And we've worked a lot together, both on a clinical level and a professional level and a personal level. So yeah, it's just a tool that's born out of my clinical experience. And I started one of the first functional medicine telehealth centers in the world over a decade ago. So I have a lot of clinical experience and thousands of patients around the world via webcam. And this book, Intuitive Fasting, is born out of that clinical experience of how to use fasting in an intuitive way. Mm-hmm. And really get to a place of intuitive eating, and what I would call authentic intuitive eating. Because we hear on social media this, hashtag intuitive eating, which works for some people without any sort of semblance of any guidance, right? It's just they have no health issues, they have no blood sugar issues, they have no inflammatory problems, no hormonal problems, no blood sugar issues, and that's just comes naturally to them. That's a certain sector of people, and that's amazing. Good for them. That's such a blessing. But most people have blood sugar problems or metabolic issues or inflammatory problems. If you look at the statistics, it's about half of the United States have a blood sugar problem, and 50 million Americans have an autoimmune condition, and millions more are just somewhere on this sort of hangry spectrum where they're struggling with fatigue and blood sugar problems. And at that point, intuitive eating is going to be really difficult, because is it hangriness or is it intuition? Is it hormone imbalance or intuition? So I want people to get to the place and show up for themselves where they can get to the place of intuitive eating and intuitive fasting, but they have to create some metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility is a fertile ground for authentic intuitive eating, because you have proper hormonal signaling, you have proper satiety signaling.
What does that
blood
mean,
sugar balance.
Metabolic flexibility?
So it's the ability to burn both sugar and fat. Most people are in various forms of metabolic inflexibility or metabolic rigidity. Yeah. So they are struggling with things like hangriness, which is, hungry and angry's evil spawn, and blood sugar problems. And it's not easy to have a healthy relationship with food when you're in that state, because you feel like things are out of control. And in many ways, things are out of control when it comes to people's health and their relationship with food and their relationship with their body. So I want to quiet that noise. I want to kill that confusion and create a stillness, rootedness in your body to become metabolically flexible. So it's like the analogy that I use in the book that's, I think, maybe good for people to hear is it's like kindling on the fire when you're in sugar burning mode. Kindling is going to create some light. You're going to get your energy, but it's going to be a quick hit. It's going to be short lived. And you have to keep putting on kindling on the fire throughout the day to maintain that blaze, maintain that energy to get through your day. Yeah. That's fine. I mean, there are cleaner kindling options in the whole food, grains and legumes and fruits and starches, all that stuff. It's cleaner than the refined junk food that is this modern Western diet, but it's still kindling nonetheless. But as its name implies, metabolic flexibility is the ability to burn both fat and sugar. Burning fat for fuel is like a log in the fire. It's more sustainable. It's more long burning. It's going to increase your energy throughout the day. But there's nothing wrong with clean kindling. You just need both for sustainable energy throughout the day. So that's what metabolic flexibility is. There's a grace and a lightness to burn whatever fuel is available.
Thank you. And I like you may or may not be meaning to bring them in. We have the top, as far as a podcast, spiritual self-help show in the world. And you're mentioning things like stillness and like lightness, because what we eat and how we eat affects our mood, affects our mind, affects the craziness or what I call the spinniness inside of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, perfectly said. I mean, this book is, as so much of my work is, this is a spiritual book for physical health and a physical health for your spiritual health. They're one and the same. We like to separate. I mean, this is so much of your work, but people in the West oftentimes like to separate mental health from physical health or spiritual health from physical health. But the reality is we can't compartmentalize that. Mental health is physical health, and that's what I'm exploring in the book.
Thank you. And I think that's so important because we have so many spiritual people who are so out of balance in their bodies. And we're going to get them there here today. Some key questions, though. First off, when people hear fasting, what they really hear is starving. Please share with me the difference.
There are many different types of fasting protocols and different ways that fasting has been used both in the clinical literature and the scientific literature, but also throughout human history. I talk in the book at length and look at fasting through the lens of ancestral health and food scarcity and how we would have evolved through times of fasting and the genetic, epigenetic component of that and how fasting is actually encoded in our DNA, but also the spiritual side of things. I mean, every spiritual tradition you can think of, Islam with Ramadan and Judaism with Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur and Christianity with Lent. Many indigenous cultures use fasting for both health and spiritual reasonings. It's sort of a pause on our bodies and our life to go inward. But now we have randomized controlled trials. We have all the scientific literature to substantiate antiquity. Research is catching up with antiquity. So it is not starvation the way that the science is exploring, especially what I'm talking about with intuitive fasting. And this is very flexible. There's a measured approach to this. It's a type of fasting called time-restricted feeding, or TRF. This is not about chronic caloric restriction. That is the antithesis of this type of fasting. You're eating ample amounts of delicious, amazing foods, but you're doing it in very specific windows. So it's the yin and the yang, right? It is a time to eat and a time for fast. But it seems so radical with our modern culture that any time of pause is scary. But I promise you, it's anything but radical.
Thank you. Let's talk. I want to talk leptin intolerance. I want to talk seitan, although I probably am pronouncing that wrong. But I want to talk late o'clock at night. Yes, let's talk late o'clock at night, Will. And what happens when we get the munchies and what's going on with our system, because it's not so much about calorie reduction. It's what happens. Everything is skewed out of balance, and then we get the cravings.
Absolutely right. I mean, yeah, people's cravings are typically driven by that imbalance, the insatiable cravings. I mean, we all have our own preferences for food and whatnot, but what I'm talking about is insatiable cravings, feeling bound by them, feeling this consuming urge and overwhelming sense of I need this food. The problem is there is a metabolic imbalance. And I mean, as I open up the book, I mean, you read the book, you know this, is that we're so much connected to nature. We like to separate ourselves from nature. We're actually part of it. And this is duality that's in the cosmos of which we're an intrinsic part of. And as there's imbalance going on in the world, in the form of climate change or the tribalism that's going on in social media and the negativity that's out there, it's happening in people's bodies too. There's like a physiological forest fire, this physiological climate change that's going on in people's body in the form of chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is the commonality between all these health problems that I'm talking about, whether that be insulin resistance and metabolic issues or autoimmune issues or chronic fatigue or even things like anxiety and depression. I mean, going back to my earlier statement, we can't separate mental health from physical health. Our brain is part of our body. Mental health is physical health.
Woohoo! All right, let's dive into intermittent fasting. Mm-hmm. Why is the stress, I'm going to put that in quotes because there's eustress, there's good stress, there's bad stress. Why is the stress of intermittent fasting actually good for us?
Yeah, wow, that's a really good question. So it's this concept of hormesis that I talk about at length in intuitive fasting. That hormesis has interesting roots. I talk about the history of the concept came from this king in ancient times named Mithridates in the Black Sea region hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So it is a good stress that makes your body more resilient. And this is the same with sauna therapy and heat therapy. It's the same with ice therapy. It's the same with high intensity interval training or exercise.
I'll add one
and
to
same
that.
With fasting.
My wife and I wrote the bestseller Barefoot Running a good decade ago. And that challenge and woke up your feet and the whole body started to get stronger because you actually had to use it and become resilient.
Exactly. So these are good stresses that are measured. That doesn't mean you're always fasting. That's called starvation. That's not good. It is not you're always in a sauna or you're not always in an ice bath. You're not always exercising. The dose is where the magic's at. So that's what I'm exploring with intuitive fasting, finding that sweet spot where you can leverage these amazing health benefits without doing too much and thinking that more is always better. That's not the case.
Thank you. So we got to go from there to rats and worms.
So a lot of studies, I'm assuming what you're referring to is a lot of studies with fasting have been done on animal model studies. So that is a tool that many researchers look at as a mechanism because we have a lot of similarities actually with the animal kingdom. So it's looking at pathways and how these things could be beneficial. And that's kind of sort of the first round of studies that are often done in the scientific literature. And then there's many human studies on fasting done as well. So a collection of animal models and human models in the scientific literature looking at these amazing health benefits of fasting. And it's quite compelling, very compelling.
I would say individual results vary individually, but you're talking in some of these studies by doing every other day eating. At no point in the book are you talking about every other day eating. You do get pretty strict at one point, and we're going to go into the 4 weeks here before we wrap things up. We're going to go into detail on those, but we're talking about up to doubling lifespan. That's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's the longevity benefits and the anti-aging or the anti-accelerated aging, I should say, or maybe pro-healthy aging pathways that fasting can bring about is very, very exciting. And this is, I mean, the phrase that comes to mind is Paracelsus's words. He was one of the fathers of modern medicine. We talk about Hippocrates in the book as well. But Hippocrates and Paracelsus, these fathers of modern medicine, use fasting for their patients. But Paracelsus called fasting the physician within, which I think is quite an eloquent way to put it. It's this inner doctor that repairs and resets and renews that we can tap into if we only give our body the chance to do so. So a lot of these longevity benefits I really see back to that concept of what Paracelsus said, this physician within.
Thank you. So let's talk about the physiology here. When we stop eating or give a pause between eating. I mean, they say it's the pause that makes the music. When we give a pause, what are we doing for our bodies?
I love that. The pause makes the music. So we are always on the go in our culture. We're always, there's an incessant noise and restlessness and distraction and consumption that's going on in our culture today. So I think if you think about like what's needed on so many levels, not just the physical level, is this pause that we need. We need to quiet the noise and create a space and a stillness to allow some light to come in in our lives. And that's how I see fasting. It's physiologically, it's letting the light in many ways, and we call it by different words. But on a spiritual, metaphysical level, there's a whole section in the book I call the metaphysical meals. Like, how do we blend this spiritual, mental, emotional side of things with the physiological? Because that's really where magic happens, because you're healing all sides of you. So what's happening here when you're giving your body a pause, it's upregulating this position within. You're getting your body into this good hormetic effect, this good stress state, for your body to wake up these pathways that have been probably lying dormant. They've been laying dormant for years, but they're being awoken like never before and upregulated. And really, it's reclaiming your birthright. It's actually encoded in your DNA, and you're awakening it because of this genetic, epigenetic. Our DNA is living in a brave new world. This mismatch, this evolutionary mismatch, are things like autophagy and lowered inflammation levels are really not looking so good because of modernity, which comes with we have amazing things. We're talking across the country right now, but it comes with a price tag for many people because we're living out of alignment with what we've evolved with. So that is getting in touch with our roots in many ways. It's so amazing to see what the body's capable of doing when we just give it that pause.
Thank you. Could you mentioned autophagy. Can you go autophagy and microphagy and what that is doing for our bodies?
Yeah. So autophagy, if you break that word down, it is autophagy. So it's self-eating. It's actually our good cells gobbling up all the dysfunctional and disease cells. Yeah. So it's this really amazing like housekeeping system that we all have that's not working so well with when we're struggling with chronic health problems and blood sugar issues and metabolic issues. So we're really upregulating autophagy, the cellular resilience, cellular renewing pathways when we're in this state of fasting. And mitophagy is actually very similar to autophagy. It's just the making of more resilient mitochondria, which we need for cellular energy. So also fasting will improve something called mitochondrial biogenesis, actually making new mitochondria. So this physician within concept that Paracelsus talked about, he's substantiated so much with modern science now.
And it's so cool that you say that when you talk about, really what you're talking about is, I have no other way to put it, because you talked about out of alignment, and I love the concept of alignment. If we got everything in alignment, we're good, body, mind, and spirit, and as a whole beingness that we call ourselves a human being, we are all one. We get in that alignment. But what we're also talking about here is a lazy body, a body that doesn't have to do what it was meant to do and forgets how to, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And even if you think about that analogy of what you just said, it's like you look at the concept of autoimmunity that comes to mind when the immune system actually turns against itself. The research actually referred to as autoimmunity when the immune system attacks and there's a rising of inflammation against the body. It's when the immune system loses recognition of self and it attacks itself. So you think of what's going on in many people's lives from a mental, emotional, spiritual level. How many people lost recognition of self and are turning and attacking themselves with shame and stress and obsession? So it's very fascinating to see the research come out, how fasting can repair that. It starts to decrease the body's attack against itself, so the immune system can start to recognize itself.
Thank you. And you just made an interesting tie-in that I didn't believe I'd go in, and then we're gonna dive back to skinny fat here. But before we do that, a lot of what we're talking about with intermittent fasting and intuitive fasting is when the sun goes down, we no longer eat, which is what the majority of mammals, they're done for the day. They're going into hiding so that they don't get eaten by the predators. We've forgotten this. But instead, we have predators that we call TV, we call it Facebook, we call it the news, we call it Twitter, and we are being bombarded with negativity in the evenings, and then we eat. And I'm going to guess that our food and our microbes get in attunement with that negativity that we're ingesting through our eyes and ears as well.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's evidence to show that in the research that I cite in the book. The microbiome, all the trillions of bacteria in our gut actually have a brilliant, beautiful, balanced circadian rhythm. So we have certain colonies of bacteria that are higher in the morning, certain colonies are higher in the evening. You have this wave-like ocean of this microbiome metropolis, all these different neighborhoods of bacteria flowing in rhythm together. But we've lost that circadian rhythm in many ways. So there's a disruption of that balance and there's an assault against that balance. through incessant eating and through especially incessant eating of foods that disrupt the microbiome. So fasting's been shown to actually reset that circadian rhythm of the microbiome. And this is 75% of the immune system. So to understand inflammation, which is a product of the immune system, you want to look at where the core, the predominance of the immune system resides, which is in the gastrointestinal system. So a lot of research looking at fasting actually looks at the gut as being actually a causative benefit as to how it could be impacting so many different areas of the body. And Hippocrates, the other father of modern medicine, said all disease or all health problems begins in the gut. And now we're seeing how fasting can help reset that central part of our health.
Thank you. My wife goes away on Sunday. She's gone for almost a week, and I am going to follow your protocol to a T. It's good that I'm doing week 1 when she's not here, because she hates it when I try anything food-wise new, because she has to be there when I'm going, I don't know what to eat, and she does not want to have anything to do with that. But I had a very good diet until we had fire outside of our door, we had COVID, we had the works going on, and we left Colorado this past fall. And we spent 2 months on the road in an RV. Good luck eating very healthy on the RV. I cannot say we succeeded. We got back here, things have still been out of order. My gut seems slightly inflamed. And so I've started going back to the healthiest, certainly no processed food diet. But things still aren't working out. It's this term that I'm calling skinny fat. If I lose a bunch of weight, I look gaunt and skeletal, and yet there's something weird going around the midriff. What in the world is going on?
So many people find themselves there, and they think that, it's just the people that are struggling with obesity and weight loss resistance that's very obvious that they're the ones with the problem. But actually, many people have metabolic disorders and metabolic syndromes that they look normal weight. It's their main, their pounds on the scale it's not egregiously out of range, but they are noticing on their body the way that their body's storing fat is a bit different. And that's one sort of check engine light that something could be off. And they know that you know your body, you're in tune with your body. And then labs can substantiate that a bit more. And many skinny people or thinner people, you never would look at them and think, well, they have metabolic syndrome. But the only way you know that is if you look at a lab. So in functional medicine, we're looking at things like triglycerides and the optimal range, not just the lab reference range, but the functionally optimal range that we look at in functional medicine for triglycerides is under 100. There are many people that are thin, normal weight, so on, like not extremely out of range, that their triglycerides are higher than 100. And that's one sign of the body saying, I don't know where to put this blood sugar. I'm going to circulate it and store it as circulating fat, as triglycerides. So it's the body's adaptation to bring glucose down, which it needs to protect itself. And then we look at things like A1C, or your average of your blood sugar. We want that under 5.5. We want to look at fasting glucose or serum glucose under 90. From fasting glucose. And then we look at inflammation markers as well, like C-reactive protein, we want them under 1, homocysteine, we want under 7. All these basic conventional biomarkers that you can get a window objectively on if this person has this, you mentioned skinny fat, this metabolic syndrome, this insulin resistance, that the body's there. Now, there's some subjective ways for people to look at that as well. I actually, in intuitive fasting, I put a quiz in the book, and the quiz is adapted from questions that I ask patients online. So it's not the same as a lab, but it's at least a pointer as to if this may be an issue for them or not.
Thank you. And since you mentioned telemedicine at the beginning, we can now, I'm guessing, do a lot of this without feeling like we need to risk ourselves in mainstream medical facilities during this time.
Yeah, that's all I've ever done. It's the past decade, we've only done telehealth. So it's definitely something that now people are aware that this is an option for them. But yeah, we'll drop ship labs to them wherever they're at, and we'll provide them clinical guidance and coaching and monitoring as far as their case is concerned. So we're not replacing someone's primary care physician, obviously, but we're providing them functional medicine guidance and support on their health journey.
Fantastic. We'll talk. So
yes, anytime. Let me know.
Excellent. With that said, how can a ketogenic diet, and I was on that for years. I lived on Maui and I wasn't even touching fruit for years because I had to kick those blood sugar challenges to a curb, which I did. But it sounds to me like they're creeping back. Even though I have a higher fat diet, I'm going down your road. We're going to see where we can get. But how can a ketogenic diet or intermittent fasting help people lose weight?
Mm. So this is both the ketogenic diet and fasting do the same thing in the sense of they both support something called beta hydroxybutyrate, or BHB, which is a ketone or a ketone body. It's known in the research as the fourth macronutrient. So you have protein, fats, carbs, and ketones. So it's a way to fuel our body and get energy. And it's not just a fuel. It's also known as an epigenetic modulator or a signaling molecule, meaning it does really cool things for our health. So one of the things it does is lower the inflammation levels and regulate autophagy and mitophagy and stem cell activation, all this. I could go on forever and ever about all these amazing things, this physician within. So both the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting both increase this state. So that's why in many ways the ketogenic diet is fasting mimicking. It's mimicking the benefits of fasting without actually fasting. So in intuitive fasting, I'm pairing a clean, mostly plant-based ketogenic diet, or what I call ketotarian, which is the name of my first book. So this is kind of a continuation of the conversation. All right, how do we do this clean ketogenic diet or ketotarian with flexible, intuitive fasting to gain metabolic flexibility? So you read the book, but I mean, for people that haven't, like I consider this as sort of this proverbial yoga class for your metabolism. Or if I went and I started yoga for the first time and I'm like, what the heck? Like, this is unnatural. How does the human body move like this? I'm so inflexible. It doesn't mean fasting's not, or it doesn't mean yoga's not right for me. It just means this is something new and I'm stretching my body. Well, this way of eating is stretching your metabolism, and new things take time to get the art and the rhythm of it and gain resilience and gain flexibility.
Thank you. And that's one of the biggest challenges for me when I go to a high-fat diet and my fridge is filled with guac and it's filled with Udo's oil and coconut and you name it of that sort, is how to find that balance where you're going, wait, I can't eat straight fat. I need to have some nutrition, although that, I guess, is all debatable as well. How do we strike that balance to get good quality nutrition in us and a lot of fat?
Yeah, so I would, as long as you're getting healthy fats, there's actually ample amounts of nutrition. So that's kind of turning a lot of things on its heads, because all of us were raised to some degree that like fats were kind of bad to not to be eaten a lot of because there's a high calories, or there's a whole like sort of stigma when it comes to fats. So we don't want to be overly reductionist when it comes to fats. There are unhealthy fats, but there are many, many healthy fats which provide us actually lots of nutrition. So things like avocados and avocado oil, lots of fiber, B vitamins, as well as healthy fats. Nuts and seeds, similarly, olives, polyphenol-rich extra virgin olive oil, all healthy fats, but rich with antioxidants. Or we look at things like wild-caught fish, clean protein, mega fats, great things. So I would say focusing on these clean keto foods, these vegan keto, vegetarian keto, and pescatarian keto foods that are what ketotarian is, you're going to get ample amounts of nutrition. But in addition to that, you don't have to fear vegetables. And I think that that's the problem with many people with the ketogenic diet done conventionally. They're like, oh my gosh, they're afraid of fiber. And it's like that creates an unhealthy relationship with food. So that's not what the message is here. It's to educate people on the benefits of fiber for your gut microbiome and actually blood sugar regulation. And there's so many good things for it. So it's a very plant forward or plant centric approach to the ketogenic diet. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and.
Thank you. So we're not talking about here, hey, I'm going ketogenic here. I'm going to go out and get some slabs of bacon, and I'm going to get some processed beef, and I'm going to get this dairy and this cheese. That's not what we're talking about.
No, it's not a bacon butter milkshake. It's definitely not.
I want to talk about a few more key ingredients for a ketotarian diet, and then I want to go through the 4 weeks so that people can get started. Everybody's going to want to go out and get your book, but I want to be able to get them started here.
Sure.
Well, not today, maybe tomorrow. I always recommend, if you're going to make any changes to your food, go to the grocery store first, set yourself up for success, and then clear out what you're not going to eat to set yourself up for success.
Yeah, good advice. Very good advice. Yeah, so other aspects of the ketotarian diet. Let's talk about the ketotarian triangle in the book. So the foundation are all these vegan keto foods. So let's start with healthy fats like coconut cream, coconut milk, coconut oil, avocados, avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, olives, and nuts and seeds, of course. And these are these vegan keto fats. And above that are going to be clean proteins and greens. So wild caught fish. If you're strictly vegan keto, you could do organic, non-GMO fermented soy like tempeh and natto. Nuts and seeds will have the protein as well. Wild caught fish are in that section as well. And lots of green vegetables, non-starchy leafy greens. And above that section on the ketotarian triangle are sulfur-rich vegetables, like things like Brussels sprouts and asparagus, onions, garlic, broccoli. These are oftentimes higher in sulforaphane, which is really good from a supporting methylation standpoint, which we need for supporting detoxification pathways, lowering inflammation levels. And then above that, the top of that ketotarian triangle are low fructose fruits, things like berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, and citrus fruits, so lemons, limes, grapefruit. So this is the ketotarian foundation. Mm-hmm. And then from there, there's flexibility in the book. It's not that you're always doing that. There's clean carb up days with, rice and more fruits and starchy vegetables like sweet potatoes. There's some flexible omnivore options as well, adding in some sustainably raised grass-fed beef. So there's definitely pivots from that center. You have your center, you have your foundation there.
Thank you. And it doesn't mean we have to go out to our fridge and throw out all of our fruits and throw out all of our veggies. No.
Yeah, I want the people to be plant forward, and sometimes we have to make adjustments to how we're preparing things. Like, for example, and we'll talk about this when we go over the 4 weeks. But there's a break the fast meal section where you're having lots of cooked stews and soups when things are gentle. So you wouldn't have necessarily lots of raw vegetables when you're breaking a deep fast or a longer fast, but you still bring the vegetables in. You just prepare them differently.
Thank you. So let's dive into the 4 weeks here. We've got week 1 reset.
So week 1 is a 12-12 body reset fast. So there's 24 hours in a day. A 12-12 is 12 hours eating, 12 hours fasting. So you have all day long, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can let it pivot to work with your schedule, but you're eating your meals throughout that 12 hours and you're fasting through the night until you break the fast at breakfast. It's going back to that adage of just don't eat too late. Allow a couple of hours to happen before you go until you go to sleep, to allow no eating a couple hours before you go to sleep.
Thank you. And I love that you brought up the term sleeping. Because in all the work that I do with people, if I get them to stop, I consider food a stimulant at a certain point. If I can get them to stop eating sooner, and I go to the Ayurvedic flame that comes up after 10 p.m., I'll actually get a deeper, more restful night's sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. So people will notice they'll actually sleep better because the blood sugar will be more stable. 95% of serotonin is made in the gut and stored in the gut in that second brain. And serotonin is converted into melatonin. And we talk about the body reset week is actually a gut reset week because it's actually resetting that gut microbiome circadian rhythm, which supports serotonin's conversion into melatonin. So you get better sleep that week.
Thank you. And how about carbs during that first week?
So during that week, we're doing a ketotarian approach with no clean carb up days. And so that's going to be less than 55 grams of net carbs in a day. Mm-hmm. So I take all the guesswork out of it because it's meal plans and pretty pictures and easy recipes for people to use. So they don't really have to think much about it. Or if they want to get super science nerdy with me, they could download an app like Cronometer or MyFitnessPal, or there's different keto diet apps if they want to track their macros, which are protein, fats, and carbs. But I made a meal plan in the book, so you don't have to think about it. But like I say in the book, you can have it keeping a simple option. You don't have to track macros if you don't want to. You could just say, eat more of this, eat less of this, keep it super simple, because you're going to get amazing benefits, even if you're not super specific about it. But I wanted to use food as medicine in that week to support the fast.
Thank you. And I like that maybe we don't have to be super specific if we're getting some understanding so that we don't actually stress ourselves out too much. And then we're going into a cortisol response at the same time. And I'm sure you've seen this time after time. People will get so strict and so rigid that you're like, get the heck off of a diet, just relax and you'll be healthier.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's a massive part of the book is that metaphysical meal. It's like, what are they serving their head and their heart? Because if they're doing an amazing protocol, but they're serving their body a big slice of stress every day, that's not good. That's going to be counterproductive for sure.
Thank you. So let's go to week 2, recharge.
So week 2, metabolic recharge fast is a 14 to 18 hour fast. So we graduated from 12 to 14 to 18. But if you notice that's a 4-hour difference. So if people want to really lean incrementally, meet their body where they're at, be gentle, and go to 14 hours. But I encourage them to at least experiment with one 18-hour fast in week 2. And that's going to be a 6-hour eating window or an 18-hour fast equaling 24 hours. So let's just say it's 12 to 6 p.m. That's your eating window, or it could move to the mornings. But you're allowing that time to pass and you're having an 18-hour fast. So it's called the metabolic recharge fast because there's so much exciting research centered around these forms of time-restricted feeding and these flexible intermittent fasting windows at lowering inflammation levels, lowering insulin resistance, balancing blood sugar, improving cardiometabolic markers, all these amazing stuff for your metabolism. So that's why it's called the Metabolic Recharge Week. And we're also doing Ketotarian that week as well.
Thank you. A couple more questions on that first and second week. What's the Keto Flu and will it pass?
So the Keto Flu doesn't happen for everybody. There's a lot of shifts happening with that physician within. So it's almost like a little procedure that's happening and your body's recalibrating and resetting and renewing all that stuff. So sometimes that can make someone feel a little bit more groggy, maybe some headaches, a little bit more just not feeling as good, like a little bit of a flu for a couple of days. It will pass. There's many ways to mitigate that. Like I mentioned, staying hydrated, making sure you're eating enough food, make sure your electrolytes are on, make sure you're getting enough sleep at night. Those are important things to mitigate that if that does happen, but that doesn't happen for everybody.
Thank you. So let's dive into week 3, renew.
Oh, it's probably my favorite week, actually. So cellular renewal week, week 3, is a non-consecutive, every other day, almost OMAD fast. OMAD is an acronym that stands for One Meal A Day, or OMAD. So it's a almost OMAD approach because it's different than a more traditional OMAD, which is a 24-to-1 fasting to eating window. This is an almost OMAD. I want a little bit more flexibility when it comes to eating. And this is a flexible fasting plan here to allow for a 20 to 22 hour fasting to eating window. So it's allowing about a 2 to 4 hour eating window, which allows you to get your calories in a bigger window. So remember, this is not about chronic caloric restriction. You're still eating your food. You're not restricting yourself during your eating windows. So I wanted to make sure that people were getting ample amount of time to digest this food. And sometimes with getting all your calories in a 1 hour traditional, more strict OMAD, it's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. And even though you're not doing it every day, you're doing it every other day, it's still a lot. So there's some studies that show, and I put this in the book, that these stricter fasting OMAD protocols can increase something called the PKR pathway, which upregulates something called metaflammation, which is what the researchers refer to as systemic inflammation. They call it metaflammation in the study. So by opening your eating window and having these break the fast meals, these soft soups and stews, it's a nice transition out of the fast, while also allowing your body to get more time to digest and get your calories in. So we're supporting these deeper fasts, these almost OMAD fasts, these 20 to 22 hour fasts throughout the day where you can work and support autophagy, these cellular renewal pathways. That's why that week is called cellular renewal, and increasing mitophagy and mitochondrial biogenesis and a lot of the longevity benefits and the stem cell activation. So that's what we're really focusing on in week 3.
Thank you. And my guess, and I haven't been to a week 3 yet, although I've done interesting, quirky things in my day so far, it makes me think actually your energy may actually come back. Your ability to think clearly may come back. You may actually find you have more focus and energy once you start to get into week 3.
Oh, yeah, because you've had 2 weeks to really start that yoga class for your metabolism. By week 3, you're pretty good at it. And it's every other day too. So you have the OMAD, and then you go back to 12-12, OMAD, back to 12-12. So there's a little more variety and flexibility in week 3 too. And your body's already burning ketones, and ketones are able to get into the blood-brain barrier, into the brain. It improves something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, actually making new neurons. So a lot of times people see brain fog alleviated, increased neural, cognitive output. They have better focus, better energy, and better blood sugar regulation too, which can cause people fatigue when they don't have good blood sugar balance.
Thank you. So now let's dive into week 4, rebalance.
So week 4 is we're opening back up to 12-12. So you see we progressively got deeper from 14 to 18 to 22, back to 12. So we're opening back up. We're expanding and contracting these vacillating fasting and eating windows, this yoga class for your metabolism. 12-12 is, and I'm calling it hormone rebalance week, is we're increasing our clean carbohydrates. So we're putting the kindling on the fire. We've built that log over the last 3 weeks. Yeah. And week 4, we're putting the clean kindling on because there's a time and place for both. This is metabolic flexibility, the ability to burn both. So clean carbohydrates like more fruits, rice, starches like sweet potatoes are needed to support thyroid health, progesterone, female hormones. So this is really important to have that balance. So that's one of the bigger conversations I have in that chapter, is this conversation that fasting isn't good for women. Well, first of all, no, all women are different. So it does us no good to be overly reductionist and say, well, fasting's bad for women. Well, who are we talking about? Who is she? But is she going through metabolic issues or PCOS, or is she not going through that? Is she going through maybe low thyroid issues, or is she lean and she's struggling with weight loss resistance? They're all women, but fasting's going to respond differently in their body. So that's why I created this plan, is to really meet their body where they're at. There should be a grace and lightness to it, and clean carbohydrate cycling, these clean carb cycling days are really important for female hormones. So that's what we're exploring in week 4.
So I'm going to go a direction I never planned on going. We've had 3 miscarriages so far. It seems that my wife's body runs out of energy. And it's certainly, there's an emotional, spiritual, well, everything is emotional, spiritual, but there's an emotional, spiritual component. But you've got me thinking, could going on a protocol, and this is a very generic answer, completely, I get it, generic answer. But I'm wondering, if we went on this protocol together, if this could actually get her system more efficient, to give her more energy to get through that first trimester bump and to hang on to baby.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously I don't know your wife's case specifically with labs and everything. I'm so sorry you guys went through all of that. But absolutely, in theory, this is very supportive of female hormone health. So if there is some imbalance going on, it's amazing what the body's capable of doing and supporting it in that way, where you can find that sweet spot to support optimal progesterone function, lowering inflammation levels, helping the gut repair, all these key things that you want for optimal fertility and optimal pregnancy. Absolutely. You're building this infrastructure through your food and through your fasting.
Thank you. So now we've gone through week 4. We're getting back to some normalcy. I like to talk to people when I talk about manifestation work, intention setting work, goals, all these things. What's on the other side of the goal? So we've made it through 4 weeks, but that's not the goal. The goal is food freedom. What do we do on the other side of these 4 weeks?
So there's a few things. One, I realize as the reader, they're going to all be different points of their journey, just like my patients are different points of their journey. So the idea is to check in with your body throughout those 4 weeks and maybe retest that quiz that you took at the beginning, that metabolic flexibility quiz. You can grade yourself at the beginning and take the quiz again after 4 weeks, and you'll see the score come down. You've improved your metabolic flexibility. You've lowered inflammation. You balanced your hormones. You stabilized your blood sugar. All of these things are going to happen for you. But after 4 weeks, we're all at different points of that journey. And some people move faster, some people move slower, and you want to meet your body where it's at. So I think most people will benefit from a couple cycles of those 4 weeks, a couple cycles through those vacillating, ebbing and flowing, fasting, eating windows. So 2 things will happen. 1, you'll continue to improve your health. Number 2, you'll continue to learn about your body. So you will be able to see, oh, I felt better with this sort of thing. I'm going to do more of this and a little bit less of that. So after 2 or 3 or 4 cycles of this, you'll be able to intuitively evolve the protocol to work for you. And this is the art of functional medicine and the heart of functional medicine. It's bio-individuality. So while you started off with a protocol that I built you through the book, after a while, you're going to get a rhythm and an art to you and your body and knowing your body. So you can have agency over your health for yourself, and you won't need me to tell you what to do.
Woohoo! Knowing your body. We're actually going to be able to know when we're hungry, aren't we? Really hungry.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've built proper insulin signaling pathways. You've helped support your gut-brain axis. You've helped support progesterone and estrogen balance for women. You've supported thyroid conversion. You've done all these things to properly create the physiological infrastructure of balance. So that that noise of before, the noise of imbalance, the noise of the hormone imbalance, the noise of blood sugar imbalance has calmed down and quieted. So now you can hear that still small voice of your intuition. It won't be this, I don't know what I should do. Dr. Google's telling me tons of different things to do. I don't even know because I feel like my body's turning against myself. Yeah. That will be gone. That will be abated. You will just have this resolute, deep discernment on what your body loves and what your body hates.
Thank you. Thank you. So on that note, where can people go to find out more and to get your beautiful book, Intuitive Fasting?
Thank you. Everything's at drwillcole.com. That's drwillcole.com. Yep. The links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores are all there, and they can learn more about functional medicine there as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And any last words of wisdom that you want to share? You've shared a lot, Will, and I'm going to encourage everybody, you're going to need at least 2 copies of this book. You're going to need at least one for you and one for the other family member who's going through this so they can have their own individual copy and you can be thumbing through this. Any last words of wisdom you want to share with people to help them on their journey?
Yeah, and you know this because you read the book already, but for people that haven't yet, you'll see it once you've read it. But the ethos of this is not an eating disorder disguised as a wellness practice. And obviously, after you've heard this conversation together, you know that it's anything but that. This is about loving your body enough to feed it good things. This is about loving your body enough to take a pause and learn about yourself, learn about your body, learn about your relationship with food, and start to find what I call in the book food peace and also body peace. And something that I say in the book is you can't heal a body you hate. You cannot shame your way into wellness. You cannot obsess your way into health. So this is really an act of service for yourself, an act of gratitude for yourself to want to live the life you were created for. So that's the whole intent of the book.
I love you, man.
Love you back. Thank you.
Oh my God, that was beautiful and exactly what people needed to hear. I cannot thank you enough, Will. This has been phenomenal. And you're taking people on a journey. It's a very powerful journey. It's, you're giving them back, as you described, their food freedom, their life. You're giving them their life back. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get intuitive fasting, and begin cranking up your inner physician today and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Will.
Thank you. That was great.
They say when the student is ready, the teacher, or in this case, the doctor, will appear. This was the interview I needed. Perhaps it was the interview you needed as well. I'm going to go through this 4-week challenge. If you want to give it a try, leave your comments below how you're doing in this journey as well. I'll be sharing about it on our YouTube membership site where you can go and check out our daily videos and daily downloads from the Guides of Awe, and you'll be able to follow our 4-week journey as well. To be able to hear from the inside, which is what Dr. Will Cole is talking about. Also, pick up a copy of Awe, the automatic writing experience, where you go quiet, you breathe deep, you get into a meditative state, you put pen to paper, and you get the most powerful words and guidance, giving you your purpose, your path, your direction in life from the universe. You can pick it up at automaticwriting.com, Amazon, of course, your local bookseller. And then, if you want to check out more life-changing shows, click here, subscribe below, and click on the bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows, YouTube premieres, and live events with me, which have grown huge every Sunday night. Love you guys so much. Shine bright. Woohoo!